Today is Friday, January 27th, 2017. And today I want to report on a story that's been going all over the internet. It's pretty much gone viral at this point. It's an unfortunate story, yet again, coming out of Sweden about yet another rape from so-called migrants, and the victim is a Swedish woman. Now, in this case, you had 3 men that gang raped one woman live on Facebook, right? It was in a Facebook group, so I don't think it was public to everybody that could watch it, but it was broadcast live in a specific group. Now, I don't know how the woman got there. I don't know what was going on with the group. Why was it just specifically in that group? Who was in the group? That's not really known. And I'll get to that a little bit more as the story progresses here. But to kind of get back on track and the point, this is what happened. You had 2 so-called Afghan nationals who came as unaccompanied minors. And you have one guy who was a Swedish citizen, but is not a Swede. I'll get to him a little bit later. But before I get into the actual clip that came from Fox News, because the story has gotten so big, it's come over here. Normally, it doesn't really happen. Normally, stories about gang rape and stuff like that from the so-called migrants in Sweden stays over there, unless you have alternative media reporting on it. But this case got so big, it really couldn't be ignored. I think a lot of that is because of the other things that have happened on Facebook Live, like people getting shot over here in the U.S. and also the mentally disabled person that was kidnapped and tortured live on Facebook for a period of hours, days. I'm not really sure how long it was. So with that in the background, I think that's why this story got a lot of traction and got picked up by national media over here. But getting back on track, I just want to give a shout out to Katarina from Sweden for giving me a lot of updates about this story, because it's very big over there. And I definitely want to be able to get this story much more attention to kind of underline the problems that exist in Sweden with the whole migration crisis. Her article she sent me and also my independent research will be in the description box below. We have articles from Sweden and also local media over here in the States. So what I want to do right now is go ahead and roll a news clip from Fox News. They basically give you a little bit more about the story, kind of reiterate what I said. And they also show like the outside of the building in Uppsala, Sweden, which is the same place where I report on another story about a young boy being gang raped in the woods at knife point, who was also an Afghan national himself, raped by other Afghans. So this is a pattern that's going on here. That's why I'm reporting it. But without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
So with the debate raging over taking refugees from the Middle East, a horrific story out of Sweden has now gotten international attention. 3 men have been arrested there, accused of raping a young woman and streaming it live on Facebook for 3 hours. Now the nationality of 2 of those suspects is coming into question. For more on this, we go to Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom. Trace.
Martha, this happened about 40 miles outside of Stockholm. Police there got several calls on Sunday morning from people who claimed they were watching a Facebook live stream of 2 men sexually assaulting a woman who appeared to be unconscious or intoxicated. When police arrived at the apartment, they found 3 men and a woman. All 3 men were arrested. A Swedish newspaper says the 2 men accused of the rape are Afghan immigrants. The other man, who's charged with not stopping the assault, is Swedish. The nationalities of the accused are controversial because Sweden, like Germany and other European countries, is having a fierce debate over immigrants and refugees. And in Sweden, this would be the 2nd rape in 3 months involving Afghan immigrants. In October, 5 Afghans were convicted of raping a teen, yet they were not deported, and only one was given, or they were only given a year in jail. In this latest case, the problem is the alleged crime was broadcast to a Facebook group consisting of several hundred people. Many of them reported seeing the rape, and some may have recorded it, but so far nobody's turned over a copy. So police haven't seen the alleged crime. And legal experts in Sweden say that makes it tough to prosecute. Listen.
There are gaps in the legislation that in principle allow this kind of publishing. Possibly it could be a crime according to the law section of calumny or the act of illegal violence depiction. But as I said, the gaps in the legislation unfortunately make it difficult to prosecute.
And there reportedly was a second live stream where the suspects tried to force the alleged victim into claiming she had not been raped. Martha.
Brutal. Trace, thank you very much.
All right. So you see what's going on there. You see kind of what's happening. You see how they pretty much rehashed what I said, and you see the apartment where it happened. Now, I don't know if they broke into her apartment. I think it was a party that she was at. There was some footage taken after the rape, and I think one of the people that may have been involved that did not stop it, but was not necessarily involved with the actual act, he has been arrested. You know, the so-called Swedish citizen who is not a Swede, probably from Iran, Afghanistan, who knows. But that person is in the video and they're talking. It was very strange. The police came afterwards. I'll place the full thing in the box below. I don't want to just have that whole thing here, and I don't want to get copyright striked. But that was kind of interesting to see how they were interacting. It was very strange. I'm not sure if it was any kind of drugs involved. I don't know what's going on. But at the end of the day, I just want to say this. These things keep happening in Sweden, and it's a pattern. Like I said before the video started, it's not anything new. This is pretty much what goes on in Sweden and in Germany and France, UK, and other places in Europe. People come from these third world countries and they do not respect the place where they're at. You know, there was another story I did about Sweden where a woman got raped who was in a wheelchair bound. She went into a bathroom and then she was proceeded to get gang raped by 6 or so-called migrants in the bathroom. That case was dropped because they couldn't prove it. And I'll place an article about that from Sweden in the box below. You see, the thing about it, Sweden, before the so-called migration crisis, was a beautiful place. And it still is in many respects. But many places are now becoming not so beautiful in Sweden due to the migration crisis. Right. So the laws that they had on the books before they came did not have to be so draconian in order to kind of understand the culture that they bring. You do certain things that go against the law in their part of the world, the penalty is much more drastic. And it has to be that way because that is a culture that they live in. They don't respect weakness. They don't respect basically a lack of penalty. They'll do things like that because they can get away with it. In Sweden before that, it wasn't really like that. It's like the old tale of being able to lock your door and not have anybody come and walk in your house, right? With that kind of environment going on, the laws you will have on the books will not be as severe as they need to be in order to protect people that don't want to respect your customs of your country. When you're able to keep your border secure, when you're able to keep your ethnic place pretty much what it is and be very restrictive on immigration, if you allow any at all, you won't have to have laws that really concentrate on a population that does not know how to behave in society. And I think that's why a lot of these rapes happen, because the laws are so vague. The laws are not really prepared to deal with that kind of energy coming from these third world countries where the laws are much more strict, where, you know, if you're a homosexual, you may be able to get executed and stuff like that. You may get killed for being of a certain religion. That does not exist in Sweden. The laws are there for the people that live there that made it a beautiful place. Now you have to have laws that are updated. And the point behind me saying that is because of not only the rape that was dropped, the case was dropped in the wheelchair rape case, but also in this case, they're saying that they can't really find the actual evidence of the rape because, again, it was streamed live on Facebook. At the same time, they're not able to find the footage because it was in the private group. They said some people did record it and they may have copies, but they're not able to procure any so far. So with that kind of, you know, going on, what are you really going to do as far as being able to prove what happened? It's really kind of a strange situation to be in, but it's not anything that's unknown. And it's not anything that has not happened before, unfortunately. So my solution would be, you know, get rid of the so-called migration crisis, get rid of the welfare system that will allow them to be over there en masse. And it's one thing to have a bleeding heart about the so-called refugees, but are Afghans refugees? What war is going on right now in Afghanistan? They just want to come to Sweden just to pretty much just be there, just to travel. The whole thing going on in Syria is used as an excuse for people to come from these third world countries in the Middle East to the very generous and nice and pristine European places like Sweden, Germany, etc. That is the truth. And if it keeps going on like this, the nice and beautiful Sweden, parts of Germany, etc., will no longer be as beautiful as they are. They will be a shell of their former selves. At one point in time, Afghanistan was a Buddhist nation. But now what? What do we have now? Afghanistan was more like India, but now it's just more like, you know, Iraq or something like that. At a certain point, people have to kind of understand what's going on. There are a lot of good Muslims out there. There are a lot of good individuals that come from that part of the world. I know many of them. They call my show and everything else. However, nobody can deny that there is a problem within Islam that makes its way to other parts of the world and infects it with a dangerous and counterproductive culture. That girl in the video, who knows why she was even there at the party? You see, it's much more complex than just saying that they're violent. It's a lot deeper than that. They come with a culture that is different than what exists there already. It's really incompatible. And as long as it's allowed to proliferate those kind of countries, the Nordic countries, Germany, Austria, all parts of Western Europe, not so much Eastern Europe because they pretty much have caught on to it, but definitely Western Europe and Northern Europe. As long as that is allowed to persist, you'll see these nations continue to decline. It's going to be a burden upon the taxpayer and the legal citizen, regardless of what ethnicity they are. It's going to be a burden upon people that just want to live in peace. So that's pretty much all I got for it. It's a really unfortunate story, but I'm going to keep reporting these stories as they come to my desk, especially something this egregious as a gang rape that was streamed live on Facebook. I mean, I thought I saw it all with the guy that was kidnapped, who was mentally disabled, but this right here kind of takes the cake. But unfortunately, these things will continue to happen as they do right now, as I'm talking, in Europe, if the people in charge do not put a halt on the en masse so-called migration to their beautiful place. So what do you think? Do you think that this is an example of yet another thing that happens when you allow people that come from these third world countries into your first world country? People that do not respect your laws, your values, your belief system. Is that what happens? Or is there something else going on that I did not cover? Or do you think I'm being a racist? You know, is it just pretty much the thing that happened on Facebook? It could have been anybody. It could have been a Swede that did it. It could have been, you know, whoever. But, you know, to you, I would say the numbers don't back you up. You know, it's a lot going on in these Nordic countries that comes from specifically the so-called migrants. That did not happen before with just the people that were of the ethnic group that had historically lived in those places. Right. I'm all for being able to have a place you call your own. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see why that's so controversial and it's so taboo to say. But whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. That's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.